third presentation is adopting improved upper confidence bounds for Monte-Carlo coach. We are presented by Yun-Ching. He graduated from the National Normal Taiwan University, and then he's now in Tokyo University, PhD student.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yun-Ching from the University of Tokyo, and today I would like to share with you our work on adapting improved upper confidence bounds for Monte-Carlo tree search. So I think most of us are quite familiar by now the concept of Monte-Carlo tree search. And a brief recap would be Monte-Carlo tree search, the secret to its success is mainly by the combination of bandit algorithms by treating each node inside the game tree as a single instance of the multi-arm bandit problem. And the mostly used UCT algorithm uses the UCB bandit algorithm. A brief recap of what is the multi-arm bandit problems is, suppose you are faced with a number of slot machines or arm bandits, and you are given the task of, by given a number of plays, and each player you can only play one machine, and that machine would produce a certain amount of reward, and mostly we assume that reward would be in the interval of 0 and 1, and your task would be try to maximize your gain. And it can be stated equivalently by minimizing the cumulative regret, as you can see defined by this equation, where R star is the mean reward of the optimal arm, which is the machine that would produce expectedly the most amount of reward. And RIT is the machine you choose to play by a certain policy or bandit algorithm on your play T. So bandit algorithms, R algorithms, generally try to minimize its accumulated regret. And UCB is one of the best algorithms for minimizing this cumulative regret. So as we have seen from the previous presentation, that we are trying to find whether or not there are other bandit algorithms that are capable of being an alternative to the UCB algorithm. And one of which caught our eyes is the improved UCB algorithm. And it is actually a work done by the original proposer of the UCB algorithm, but it is a bit different from the original version. In the original version, it is quite simple. We always play the arm bandit that has the highest confidence band. But in this version, the input requires us to give us the set of arms available to us. And the second is the total number of plays that we are allowed. So maybe we are given maybe 10,000 plays that are allowed to play and try to do the best we can. But in the original UCB algorithm, we don't require such kind of input. And we will maintain a regret, an estimated regret delta. And this delta will be served as the width of the confidence bound. And of course, we will maintain a set of candidate arms. That is a possible set of arms that might be the optimal arms. And the algorithm, given the total number of plays, divides the plays into a number of rounds, as you can see defined by this equation here. And in each round, we perform 3 steps. The first is arm selection. So in this step, we will play each arm inside the candidate arm nm times. The definition of nm I will introduce later. The second is arm elimination. So we have this set, and we will try to eliminate those that we are quite sure that are not optimal. And what is the criteria? The arms that its upper bound is lower than the current best bound, the lower bound of the current best arm, and we will remove that arm from consideration, or literally from the set. And then we will update the delta n. That is, we will shrink the width of the confidence bound by halving it. So this completes one round, and we will continue to perform these 3 steps until the required number of rounds are met. So this is the improved UCB algorithm. So a brief overview of some of its properties. So the first is we take a look at the confidence bound definition. This is the traditional UCB algorithm. This is the first is the exploration term, that is the current reward we have, the current average reward we have gained so far. So this is the same for both confidence bound. The difference is inside the definition of the exploration term. The C is the constant, as we know, and big N is the number of plays we have played so far, and TI is the number of plays we have played on this particular arm. And for the improved UCB algorithm, it is a bit different. Inside the log, the big T is the pre-given total number of plays, and delta is the, as I say, the difference between the suboptimal arm and optimal arm. And as I said before, it is representative of the width of the confidence bound. So NN is defined here as this follows, and it dictates how much time do we need to sample each arm inside the candidate set. So essentially, this is not quite intuitive. So what does it evaluate? Actually, if we substitute NN by its definition, we will see that after each round, the improved UCB algorithm essentially confirms what our intuition suggests. It centers the estimated bound by the current average reward we have received so far by the width of the estimated bound. So this is effectively what the improved UCB does, and it is a bit different from the UCB algorithm, where the bound is asymmetric to each arm, but it is symmetric, essentially the same length for each arm. So why is it called the improved UCB algorithm? Because it improves its bounds on the cumulative regret. So as you can see here, the K is the number of arms, and T is, as we have seen so far, the total number of plays, and delta is the same as I have said before. And it only differs in this term, the delta. And since delta is between the value of 0 and 1, so it is actually a tighter bound on the cumulative regret. So, but it presents some kind of difficulty when we are trying to make a direct application to Monte-Carlo tree search, as we did with the UCB algorithm. The first is, it is not an anytime algorithm. It requires us to give the total number of plays beforehand. And in the UCB algorithm, we don't really need to specify the total number of plays we are given to give the theoretical guarantee. But in Monte-Carlo tree search, especially in tree search, it is hard to determine the required number of total plays we need for each node. So this is the first kind of difficulty. The second kind of difficulty is early explorations. As we have seen before, it tries to eliminate suboptimal arms from a considered set. So rather than always sampling the best arm. So in the context of tree search, it is trying to verify the parts that are not where the PV is. It tries to prune that part. And since we are rather restricted when we are actually performing game tree search, it may end up spending most of the time verifying that part and trying to eliminate it from consideration. But we may stop prematurely and end up spending much more time in that kind of tree rather than the possible path that should be where the PV is. So to overcome these two kinds of difficulties in applying improved UCB algorithms, we try to make some modifications to the improved UCB algorithm. So actually, there is already a solution for the first problem. In the original proposal of the algorithm, the author proposed an episodic execution of the algorithm. That is, first give the total number of plays by 2, and we will always increase the total number of plays given to the improved UCB with each iteration. So by this kind of similar to iterative deepening, we don't need to specify the total number of plays beforehand. And they do, the authors did provide a cumulative regret bound, but it is, of course, looser than the original algorithm. So this is the first way we overcome the first difficulty. The second would be a bit complex. The first is the early exploration phase, and we need to tackle it by two kinds of perspectives. The first is the algorithmic modifications. The first, of course, most intuitively, when performing tree search, it would be much more easier and efficient to verify whether that part is actually the relevant part, the PB part. So we modify it to really optimistic sampling. That is, we only sample the current best arm. Now, what I mean by the best arm is that it has the highest confidence upper bound. And by this kind of definition, intuitively, it will provide a stronger guarantee for the current best arm. But of course, at the same time, we will have weaker guarantee for the arms that are not being sampled. And the second is, we still need to maintain a candidate arm count. Although we are sampling only the current best arm and effectively a really aggressive kind of elimination, apart from the current best, we are not sampling the others, we still need to maintain the arm count. Why? Because the reason lies in for updating delta N. The time when we are halving delta N, we need to know when should we halve it in order to try to maintain the original kind of properties of the proposed confidence bound. And the time when we are halving delta N is actually after the first step, where we sample each arm in the set n times. So after that amount of plays, we should update the delta N in order to try to capture the original properties of the proposed upper confidence bound. So this is the algorithmic kind of perspective to the modifications. And of course, with these modifications, we need to also do some tweaks with the confidence bound modification. And since we are always sampling the current best arm, it is logical to have a tighter bound for the arms that have been sampled more than others. And since we are always using the algorithm in an episodic way, and in the episodic way, the only information passed is through the average reward we have received so far, we need another way also to pass on the information from episode to episode, So we did a really small kind of modification to the definition of the confidence bound by adding an extra factor, Ri, to the confidence bound here. And Ri is actually rather simple. The big N is the current number of plays we have performed so far, regardless of the episodes. And a brief comparison is T is relative to the episodes. So this is unrelated. So you can always share information across the episode through the factor Ri. And of course, Ti is the time regardless of the episode, the arm is sampled. So by adding this RI, what are the implications? So by using the same steps, we substitute NM with its definition, and we will see that it actually has, it only adds an extra factor here, the square root RI, which is essentially this equation here. So sum up, by our modifications, the modified improved UCB algorithm is also similar to the UCB algorithm, but with in a few kind of different ways. The first is it always plays the best current best arm. The second is maintaining the arm length. If we don't need to know specifically which arm is eliminated, we only need to know how much arm is remained in the set in order to provide the calculation for the deadline of halving the estimated width of the confidence bound. So this is the modified improved UCB. So how are we going to use it to the Monte-Carlo tree search? Of course, it is rather simple. Our aim is also to apply it as the same way as UCB in UCT. And so the tree search paradigm is essentially the same. Selection, expansion, simulation, and backpropagation. The only difference is we are using modified improved UCB or to trees. So we give it a short name, ME-UCT. And the difference is the selection phase we use our bandit algorithm, and backpropagation we need to maintain delta and the deadline for its half. So how does our modifications affect its performance? And first of all, we will take a look at how it performs on the multi-arm bandit problem in its original. The experimental settings, we selected the arm number of 60, which is roughly maybe most branching factor of some games. So, and we averaged the results over 2,000 randomly generated tasks. And the rewards are drawn from a normal distribution centered with WI and the variance of 1. And the WIs for each arm, the mean reward for each arm, are also drawn from the Gaussian distribution or normal distribution centered at 0 and with the variance of 1. This setting is one of the original settings used for introducing multi-arm bandit problems. So, so first we will take a brief look at the cumulative regret. And for each algorithm, we will run an episodic version and non-episodic version. So essentially, they are quite similar, only by different kind of execution. So as we can see here, the red line here is the UCB. So it performs really well in restricting the cumulative regret. And in the original improved UCB, this green line here, that is when the total number of plays are given to the algorithm. And the blue line is when the total number of plays is not given to it, and it is executed in an episodic way. So as you can see here, it has a really huge gap between UCB and UCB, which is quite counterintuitive despite its better found theoretical bound. So maybe one possible lesson we can learn from this is that empirical performance may not necessarily conform with the theoretical kind of analysis. And the possible reason why is that we guess is that due to early explorations. Because most of the, as you recall from the algorithm, most of the early plays are spent on the suboptimal arms and trying to verify it and eliminate as early as possible from the set. So since we are sampling those kind of arms, will result a high cumulative regret in the early stages. as you can see, it flattens out rather rapidly. And the second is, what are the impacts of our modifications? So the first is, if we only modify it to a greedy algorithm, and we don't add the R factor inside the definition of the confidence bound, the result is a linear increase in the regret. So it is actually, we reduce it similar to these most simple epsilon greedy algorithm. But by adding the R factor, we are able to get it back into a sort of a similar kind of increase as the original algorithm and restricting it. And as you can see, the trend is actually going down, although it is not that steep, but it is going down. And actually, you can get a hint that UCB is going up. So maybe there is a point where the two lines will meet, but it may be really, really far into the future. And the most important thing is that in tree search, we don't have that kind of luxury. So this is the MAB problem. And another perspective is the percentage of time the optimal arms has been selected. And as you can see, in the episodic version of each algorithm, there's a slack. That is where a new episode ended, and old episode ended, and a new one begins. And as you can see here, the red line, the UCB algorithm, finds the optimal arm fairly fast and keeps with it at a really strong state. So that is why it is the dominant kind of bandit algorithm right now for MCTS. But interestingly, in the original improved UCB algorithm, which is represented by this green line, and this blue line is the episodic version, is that we can see that it performs as the way we have explained. It eliminates the suboptimal arms fairly fast, and it rapidly increases the percentage that it selects the most, the optimal arm. So, and the rate of its growth is really rapid, and it will be, it might be catching up with the UCB in the near, maybe more kind of number of plays are given. And what are our impacts on the percentage of action selection? The first is if only we do the greedy selection and without the R factor, the algorithm seems to be stuck on suboptimal arms and will stay flat rather early with a really low percentage. But with that R factor, we are able to keep the properties of the original. We are able to keep the properties similar to the original algorithm, and with a much faster rate of converging to the optimal arm selection percentage. So this is the multi-arm bandit problem. So how does it perform in real game scientific situations? We performed it on 2 games. The first is 919 Go, and also on the same board size of no-go. And we have performed a total of 1,000 games where each algorithm plays 500 games each with black and white. And both algorithms, the ME-UCT and the original UCT, uses pure random simulation, since we want to test how effective the bandit algorithm is without any other kind of external influences. So we didn't use any intelligent payout or any extra heuristics. And we tested by giving a fixed number of playouts for both algorithms. And since in the original kind of our proposal of the mean UCT, there is not really a specific kind of parameters we need to tune. We will try to find the best setting for UCT against mean UCT. As you can see here, with 1,000 playouts, 3,000 playouts, and 5,000 playouts, the mean UCT performs quite on par with the plain UCT, roughly on the same level on 919 Go. But more interestingly, on no-go, it seems to perform better when only a fewer number of playouts are available. And it deteriorates its performance rather rapidly. So that is a phenomenon we need to take a look at. So to sum up, actually the general kind of goal of our research is trying to find the criteria of what kind of bandit algorithms are suitable for Monte-Carlo tree search. And the performance of our proposed algorithm is roughly the same on 919 Go with plain UCT, but on no-Go, as more playouts are given to it, it seems to deteriorate. And further developments, that is, trying to overcome this, we have actually found a remedy to it, is Ri by defining the Ri with an extra square root here. And of course, we didn't have any kind of theoretical analysis on the algorithm yet. It would be also important to look at the theoretical implications of our modifications to the algorithm. So this is a brief kind of overview of our work. Thank you.
I have just a very short question.
Yes.
In the real experiments with Go and no-Go, it seems like MeUCT was slightly better. Is that correct?
Yes, in no-Go only, but in Go, the only kind of relevant kind of result is the one correct, because essentially we are trying to tune the best C constant for UCT. So in no-Go, the best result comes from 1,000 playouts, where the MeUCT can achieve a best result of 56% win rate against plain UCT when the C is set to 0.2, but rapidly deteriorates to 45%. Right. Yeah. So of course, a possible reason we are guessing is that essentially the resulting kind of evaluation resulting from using this bound is a bit similar to the UCB algorithm, where the difference is there's a log term here, and this is a constant. So it might be rather similar to the UCB algorithm, but with a dynamic kind of adjustment to the constant factor. But the factor we add here, the difference is in the log function, and the log function provides a faster kind of convergence. And this is a bigger kind of value. So maybe with more playouts given to it, it will perform unnecessary explorations, or it might need more playouts for it to converge to good results.
So, if I was first. I think you had some problems with this episodic, the fact that you need to know the exact number of simulations beforehand.
Yes.
So have you also considered, for instance, what I've also seen is that you only would use the improved UCB at the root, and then in all other parts of the tree you use normal UCB. So instead of using the algorithm everywhere, you only use it near the root.
I haven't tried that kind of combination. I only tried using it on every node inside the game tree. And of course, I think the fundamental question is, what does minimizing cumulative mean when it comes to the context of game tree search? Why does it, minimizing it would benefit the search?
Yeah, because the problem is that if you have these very good bounds on cumulative regret, that means you have worse bounds on simple regret.
Yes.
And this might be a problem. You can actually try to improve the cumulative regret that your simple regret doesn't come from.
Yes. So your question actually brings me to why I said the recent kind of development to our work is modifying Ri here. So maybe I can show everyone some preliminary results. So by modifying this factor, we are able to outperform the plain UCT. try to restrict the win rate of our algorithm to 53% or 54%. And since you stated simple regret, and by adding this I factor, actually we are essentially trying to minimize the simple regret in a way, because by adding this factor, it is actually equivalent to another simple regret algorithm, the UCB square root algorithm. And the difference is that in the original proposal of the algorithm is they use only a constant C, which we did the experiment with the original version, and it has the same problem as I proposed, early explorations. So by substituting I with this one, the essential kind of evaluation changes to the delta factor inside the improved UCB algorithm. So actually, we are dynamically restricting the amount of exploration that is performed inside the UCB square root algorithm. And at the same time, we are trying to minimize the simple regret rather than the cumulative regret in the end. So this cumulative regret is actually maybe a measure of the efficiency of the process, and the simple regret is actually about the quality of the results. So that is our current progress right now. And of course, as I have stated on NOGO, the issue of scalability, scalability, as you can see, is rather good on when we did that kind of modifications, achieved a win rate about 56-57% over plain UCT.
Okay.
Can I quote you on that explanation of the difference in cumulative and simple regret?
Yes.
It's very elaborate, very nicely.
Okay. The last question.
And maybe one simple question on, so the delta M you start by 1 and half it in each round.
Yes.
So for UCB and upper confidence bound, you use a much smaller C than 1. So you shrink the confidence bound for UCB. So if you try maybe to start with a lower delta M from the beginning, let's say 1/2 or even 0.1, maybe you can eliminate arms much faster and get similar to the results than the UCB with this very low C.
That is an interesting idea, and I think I'll try it in the future. But one question you mentioned about converging to the performance of UCB. Actually, the most direct kind of modification of convergence to UCB is adding a log here. And our preliminary result is that it actually converges with similar kind of results to UCB. So maybe adding the log function would be not enough kind of exploration. And since the growth rate of log function, square root function, and no function at all is in that order. So maybe the best kind of balance between these functions might be the square root. At least this is our current guess.
Okay, I think it's that's the
Simple question about this table. How
Yes.
significantly are the data here? Because when you start from 0.2, it's 59%,
Yes.
plus minus 2% standard deviation.
Yes.
And then you go to 0.9, 59.26
Yes.
versus standard deviation. Difference in checking the CW. But in between you go to 63, then go to 62, again to 63, then to 61. Could you please explain what's happening here?
I have to say I don't know what is happening, but essentially, at least at current state, we are treating it as since they are overlapping each other. So maybe there is not a gap. We are trying to find the best kind of way, but we are only finding it in a really simple sense that where the wind rate drops significantly, and we will check its neighborhood. So 0.3, between 0.3 and 0.4, and 0.4 and 0.5. But of course, if we are still doing the experiment. So if we are going to do it thoroughly, we need to check all that kind of intervals. But it is still a working process. So.
Okay. Thanks for